Welcome to another CIRF report, everybody. This one's a big one. Big energy coming on the 10th of June. For most of you, you'll be watching this today on the 9th on a Wednesday. So on Thursday morning, we're going to be looking at an annular solar event, the total solar eclipse, and we'll talk about the difference between a total solar eclipse and an annular solar eclipse. And here is our overview slide. Other than those two big things, we've got a solar eclipse happening at the very start of our CIRF week, And then we have, I think a day or two into it, by the weekend, Mars will be entering into Leo. So the motor starts to rev up a little bit. And then beyond that, there's sort of like a spaghetti week. It's sort of all over the place. We have adjustments. We have lots of trines. We have additional amounts of squares that we'll look at, especially at the beginning of the week. And then from the Dreambot part, so if you're new here, we're looking for overlaps. And in the overlap to all three of these circles is right in the middle. And it's sort of a chaotic time. Yeah, the new moon represents the solar eclipse. That can be a little bit chaotic, but what we're talking about mostly is Mercury. So Mercury's got a couple things going on in retrograde and the heading towards Cazimi in a combust situation. I'm going to argue that it never really gets into Cazimi, but I hear other people talking about that Mercury and the sun get close enough to call it Cazimi. I sort of disagree, and the effect on our mental aptitude is that it's going to be a little bit confusing, distractibility, a lot of things going on, maybe accidentally cut corners, maybe get impatient with things. And you know what? Come to think of it, as much as Gemini I have in my chart, I don't like having excuses, but I think that I've pinpointed an influence in the previous CIRF reports where I put up the wrong rave mandala, and kudos to all of you for catching that. I think it was a 45 and a 47 or something. I put up the 47 and read the wrong one. I've got a Gemini ascendant and a Gemini moon in the first house. And so I have a big presence of Mercury, even though my sun is an Aquarius. So I'm a lot of mental aptitude. And when Mercury goes into retrograde, especially right around that period where is my ascendant and my moon, it's really hard to think. And it really does affect some of my CIRF reports because it's harder to make patterns. This is sort of my specialty as an Aquarian, making patterns, making guesstimates about the next data point that might be coming. All that's a little bit harder for me. So I've got to calm down, take my time. And I think a lot of you need to do this too, but I think I'm more affected than your average person. So here's what we're looking for: the overall influence. There's this pressure to create from the standpoint of the annular solar eclipse. This is the new moon. It's basically a new moon in Gemini. And not that Gemini is all about creating things, but where mind starts, body follows. And then you've got this big pressure thing with Mercury square Neptune, even the sun and the moon square Neptune, which brings in this pressure to imagine something. And that's where the creative process really starts. And so the new moon combined with these challenges to Mercury and challenges in Gemini and the squares indicates that there's this sort of this pressure to get stuff done, or not get done, but pressure to create something, pressure to imagine something better, that sort of thing. And that matches with the I-Ching 38 says diverging interests. And this is sort of us feeling, it's not like, it's an extension of last week, but feeling a little bit more isolated, or feeling a little bit more pushed out of the group, or feeling a little bit more differentiated from the tribe, if you will. Not like you're an outsider, there's versions of this, there's degrees of this. And so anyway, as you're feeling a little bit slightly more isolated socially, then you're going to have these divergent interests, which come from that Mercury and Sun and Moon square Neptune. I'll talk all about this in the future as we go through here. We're going to go day by day with the astrology as we always do. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Dreambot too. And there's, look, number one meme is building/construction. You're going to see this as a very material sense, but I'm translating. Dreams work very metaphorically most of the time. Sometimes they work literally, and we have to consider that too. But they all touch the very middle, which in the middle of this astrology is the annular solar eclipse in Gemini. So we've got a direct overlap, very high congruency score. And the center of this, the overlap, is that seed that's within you, that there's got to be something more. There's the feeling like there's this, and it's almost not a vacancy now. Sometimes creation comes from a vacancy or a problem. This time it seems like it's going to feel more of like a pressure, chunk, chunk, the walls caving in, and something's got to burst. It's that feeling that I'm getting, and it'd be interesting to see how it manifests in all of you. But the most important part of this CIRF report is going to be the end, where we talk about how to behave and how to maximize this massive energy, the annular solar eclipse. All right, so hang on. We'll start with the Dreambot next. Welcome to the Dreambot. This is the collective dreams. Literally, people put their dreams into various places on the internet, and then our Dreambot goes scouring around and collects what are people dreaming about, and this is the result. And this top word at a 90 point, almost a 91 surge scale score, which is really unusual. The word is disgusting. And the red arrows along that meme, disgusting, bother, thick, empty. So it's just sort of icky. There's an icky small meme, but with a big word up at top with a score of 90, 244% surge. That's important. That's something to not ignore. So icky, something icky. And I'm confident that all of you can think of something that's disgusting at a collective level. There's quite a few of them. But the biggest meme is the building construction thing. Office, a building, elevator, steel, concrete, metal, steel, concrete, and metal. So it's definitely a very material concept here, but I'm taking it also metaphorically as the overlap. It's this creation process, this pressure to create. And then, of course, we've got a female meme here. It's only 3 words: lady, women, female. And so consider that. There's not a lot of male other than the building thing, but that, the creation, if you boil it down to yang in and of itself is the creative. And so you've got the male and the female. But direct gender words, they're going to be more female in this one. Just pointing that out. No agenda there or no opinion of that, just highlighting that. So now let's talk about the astrology. And thanks, just quick shout out to Laura on Telegram. She is the one who notified me that my problems and issues with Mercury retrograde are showing in the last CIRF report. So apologize, but this is why it's important for all of you to question everybody. Question their resources, question their connections that they're making, question the slides that they put on the video, including me. And then we do this best as a tribe together and questioning everything. So I'm not only good with that, I'm asking all of you to really, really pay attention and really make your own connections, do your own research, and yeah, it's hard to go wrong when you do that yourself. Think for ourselves. Way to go, Laura. Thank you. All right. So overview of the astrology. Just to reiterate the big picture, Mercury's in retrograde and will go direct sometime around 22nd of June, but then stay in Gemini this whole time. And we have that same old, that square. Oh, we've been talking about Uranus and Saturn chiseling away at the status quo. Here's the big one. Mars going into Leo. Revving up. And, the hammer here is the reason why this is so significant is because Mars coming out of Cancer was in a fall and weak and sort of feeling lazy. And now all that changes, and it's going to be not a disaster, not a distraction either. There's my Mercury retrograde again, but it's massive fire on the Mars from this fall lethargy, situation that we had for quite some time, past few weeks. And so now all of a sudden, boom, fire. So that's going to be feeling refreshing. And that's the day after an annular solar eclipse. And what does that mean? Annular means that there's that ring of fire because the moon shape is smaller than the sun shape based on how close the moon is to Earth. And so it's a little bit further out, meaning that it's smaller in relation to the sun. And so you're going to have that bright ring around it. But only those people up in, I don't know about the other side of the Earth from where I am in Central America, but the people who are going to see it are, I believe, in Nova Scotia, but somewhere up in Canada and then down through, I think, Massachusetts, somewhere up in the Northeast. I have a diagram here. And you're going to see that at sunrise. For folks on the East Coast of the U.S., this is actually this gaggle here. Remember, these slides are for Central Time. So that's 5:52 a.m. Central Time. And that's where the new moon is at 19 degrees Gemini, 47 minutes. And but for the East Coast, you're going to see this above the horizon at 6:52. So you're going to look above. And if you're high enough in the Northeast, then you're actually going to see the ring of fire. Oh, let me do this really quick. Doop, doop, doop. You're going to see the ring of fire. And it's like over the lakes up there. But path coming in from Canada, and I don't know these territories in Canada, but down through Massachusetts, maybe some people in New York can see that. And then if you're off the path, then you're going to see snippets of it, like a little pie. Like little pies, but you won't see the ring of fire. Anyway, big energy on this new moon, and it's a new cycle. New moons are cycles. It's a new moon in the cycle of Gemini. So mental aptitude, learning, communication, how to get along, how to negotiate, how to make contracts. By the way, contracts, hopefully not making a lot of those big decisions in Mercury retrograde at this time, especially with Mercury now getting really close to the sun and within 8 degrees. We call that combust. And so your mental aptitude comes down. Maybe things get a little bit more confusing. Anything good with Mercury, and it's Mercury retrograde. So you got a double whammy here with mind, everything with logic, maybe even travel, short-term travel, transportation, these sort of things, even communication, what's being said over the internet, email, the content being expressed to others. Watch all of that because it's at a very weak point here, including and especially the solar eclipse. in Gemini. So does that mean it's a bad thing, this energy, this stamp? I think it makes us a lot more vulnerable. If you can, I think the key is going to be centering. And in order to center properly emotionally, I think you're going to have to use very mindful procedures to avoid the downfalls or the pitfalls of Mercury retrograde in combust status during the eclipse. So it's like allowing the energies to be there without really thinking a lot about them. And to do that, with Sun and Gemini, it's hard to not think. But we have to do our best to allow things to happen, but live in the now, live in the present moment through your 5 senses, and that will aid in thinking less. But consider this too. You got this new moon. You got the part of fortune, by the way, which brings a very fortunate stamp of energy to this new moon. And this is not your typical 30-day-ish, 1 month new moon cycle. This is more of years or at least months, depending on which astrologer, which professional astrologer you want to choose. And I don't have an opinion there yet. I don't have an opinion on when this energy is going to manifest the best. I look at it as more of a cycle, and I like the shorter term cycle myself is what I prefer, but very fortunate and sort of it's got the timeline that we mentioned last time. You got the North Node, which is still just on the edge of conjunct. So you have that future-oriented sort of flair to it, but you also have the Mercury retrograde, which is a little bit more past-oriented. So you have the whole timeline. And Gemini's air signs are very cognizant of time. And so there is this timeline concept to this solar eclipse energy stamp. But one of the biggest things here is the alignment. You've got the new moon and Mercury with a square over to Neptune. So I mentioned distractibility last time. Yeah, I think so. Especially if you're trying to think, or if you're trying to use logic or ride around, transport yourself somewhere. But I think overall you're going to see a lot of pressure to dream, pressure to create, pressure to daydream or even escape, which is Neptune. Neptune is the addiction, escapism, but also can be fantasy, but it can be sort of insight too. I mean, creation comes from imagination. And so that's the king of imagination is Neptune. But there's this sort of pressure to do it. And what I'd like to offer is the best that we can do here at the time of the eclipse is to just let that energy unfold naturally and not really think a lot about it at this moment. Our time to think will be coming. Don't worry. But I don't think it's right now. I think you're just going to have to let things happen. I think that's about it on this slide. Now, as we get into Friday the 11th, the big news is Mars going into Leo, and I highlight this as the biggest energy because it's the biggest shift in a remarkable close planet. Our yang essence of getting stuff done and moving forward in life is Mars, and so it's shifting into a fire sign. I really think that's going to be beneficial for those of you who felt held back, felt conflicted, felt consolidated in a more of a financial sense. But this certainly isn't a financial thing, but other than just hard work, getting stuff done. But, Leo isn't about real serious nature. And so there's this childlike state here, wonderment. It's eyes wide open of all the possibilities. And right after a new moon, this is a really strong energy that can help us achieve the insights that you allowed to have happen during the solar eclipse, in my opinion. Let it instruct you naturally, and then you've got the next day the essence to be able to go do it. And then more positively, you've got an adjustment on Mars as Mars kicks into Leo, picks up an inconjunct, and has to adjust to wisdom. And it's like a transcendent wisdom because we're talking Jupiter and Pisces. And so it's really important for that solar eclipse to instruct you by not thinking a lot about it, allowing the energies to take place. And then on Friday, it's instructing your yang energy to be able to go do whatever it is that this solar eclipse cycle has for you. Then we also have the moon going over to Venus. I don't normally talk a lot about the moon, but I propose this is important because you already have Venus in Cancer, and now moon is home. And that's the main thing that I'm focusing on here that makes that moon energy, the mother, the maternal instincts, the protecting, everything Cancer is now combined with your relationships. So relationships are really extra Cancer right now for these 2 days, Friday and Saturday. You're gonna see a lot more emotions, but a lot more looking out for others in your relationships, a lot more protecting relationships, that sort of thing. And it can be very beneficial. All righty, going into the weekend. Mercury is still combust. Now Mercury and the Sun, we're doing this. So now Mercury's on the other side, still combust, but outside of Cazimi. Now the reason why I'm negating Mercury Cazimi is because in the vertical action, they are not in the same piece of sky. So outside of that, it's supposed to be 17 minutes away. And I think Mercury is outside of that. So I'm not calling that. And unfortunately, that's like your brief moment of real mental clarity. And because they're not in that same 17 minutes, then you never really get that Cazimi. You never get that real super clarity of mind. And it just stays combust. And but now, as the Sun progresses direct and Mercury continues retrograde for a while until the 22nd, you're going to see more and more distance from these two. And so basically, starting on Saturday, the 12th, you're going to see clarity gaining for mind, especially on the 22nd, 23rd, when Mercury begins to go direct. And then I'll point out to Uranus. Uranus has an opportunity, a sextile with Venus, who's still conjunct with the moon. So even on Saturday, still a little bit extra protective and extra caring and extra nurturing, etc. And then you also have the Uranus square Saturn. We've been talking about that for weeks. Change is in the air. Status quo is changing. There's the Venus again, Venus sextile Uranus. It's an opportunity. It's all week where there's some change or some insights coming from or about or for your relationships. Then transition Venus into finance. It can be some heavy duty opportunity. Be on the lookout for really nice financial opportunities or insights about opportunities from a change position. It might be time to overhaul your stock portfolio or something along those lines, changing it up or listening or looking, researching, getting insight from seemingly nowhere. That's the Uranus aspect, the mad scientist of finance. There might be an opportunity there for you. And then on Monday, the 14th, check this out. Now we've got a T-square on the mad scientist, Uranus. Now, there's a way that you can stay in this energy and really get some insight because Uranus is the aha of the zodiac. It's the aha moment. Oh my God, how did I not think about that? That's Uranus. It's also technology. It can be a trap of technology. A lot of people think of T-squares where you got two 90-degree alignments and then an opposition. That's a T-square. It's a trap. It can be entrapping. So if in that sense, you could be trapped in some sort of technology situation, or you could be trapped in change. And that could be feeling like you have no control over anything. And so if you feel that, I mean, if it feels disastrous for you, like you're trapped in it, then the answer typically for most astrologers is to go to the opposite side of the T-square, which would be Scorpio. And there's nothing really over in Scorpio. So it's just seeing life through the lens of Scorpio. And honestly, you could do some shadow work here. This is the deep inner aspects of us. We can be looking at deeper emotions in us, but careful when you tap into the Scorpio nature. They're really deep. And once you get in there, it can feel like quicksand where it like takes you under. It feels like you're drowning in these emotions. But, you can also look for your passions. Scorpios are a very passionate group. And so seek your passion might be the answer. If you're feeling too much change or trapped in it, or too much insight, too much creativity. But some of you might be able to use this trap for good, for your good. And that is to be able to stay in it without succumbing to it, and then get the insights out. And then maybe planning on making changes instead of making the changes now. You can download the insights now, plan them out for how you're going to institute them in your life. And then once this T-square is done, then maybe go implement. That's one idea as well. On Tuesday, we're starting to get a lot more inconjuncts and a lot more. This is the spaghetti. It's just so much happening here. There's 4 alignments with the moon. So these decay pretty quickly. You've got the 2 remaining squares. Saturn in retrograde is going to increase the length of this Saturn square Uranus. And you got the Sun square Neptune. So there's more pressure that continues, more pressure to escape. But spaghetti, it's like the energy's all over the place. Then on Wednesday, we conclude the CIRF week with quite a few easier energies. A lot of trines. You got the moon in Virgo. It's more of an earthy thing. You've got the energies of the squares that are only 2 of them now, and they're waning, both of them waning. You have a couple of inconjuncts, so there is some adapting to do. But overall, easy energy. It's not guaranteed to be feeling positive. So you can just look at all these different alignments. Venus, trine, Neptune, it can be easy to escape. That doesn't sound like a good thing in all cases, but it feels easier. Things are easier on Wednesday. All right, bottom line. All right, let's remove the highlighter and let's get into the I-Ching. And back me up on this, but I did some other copy paste to help us figure out if I did this accurately. The influence is hexagram 38 and its diverging interests. And 38 says some level of estrangement is indicated, and they have examples here. But I wanted to go, I think the lines mean a lot more. The lines are the bottom one, which is 1, 3, and 6. And it's fire over lake. So the top line says, estrangement can arise from a failure to clearly perceive the world. Wow. So like we talked about last time, this is a direct confirmation of last week's reading where we talked about the Mercury retrograde square Neptune is the iterative feeling, or the outcome of this alignment is feeling estranged because it's hard to perceive things. You're distractible. You're feeling like you're missing something. You feel like you don't understand what they're saying. And that feels like estrangement, according to line 6. Line 3 says, this talks about Murphy's Law. It may seem at times the universe is conspiring against you, but when opposition to progress is at its peak, an opening soon emerges. That's the indication here on line 3. When bad luck strikes, the best strategy may be to join up with someone whose luck is better than yours. Interesting. So that still goes with that estrangement thing, and it sort of goes along the lines of, in addiction counseling, is to make sure that you find a social group that is much like what you want to be, and you will soon conform to those standards. And in this case, it's you're being in a group that's just a little bit more lucky. Caution, and this is line 1, the bottom, caution is justified against negative people who may have forced themselves upon you, perhaps through some misunderstanding. Take it or leave it from there. All right, folks, let's go right into the solution. When you make those changes to 38, lines 1, 3, and 6, you get thunder over wind, endurance. Endurance reminds me of Taurus. And that's a sort of a foreshadowing. What do you think that is? That's the sidereal solution. So the solution, according to the CIRF report, is to endure. But endurance is cultivated when determination is coupled with flexibility. The problem with Taurus is they're not really well known to be flexible. When you've got to move a fast-moving train, it's hard. That momentum is hard. And so we have to remember to be a little bit lighter, a little bit more adaptable. Unfortunately, our adaptable Mercury is in retrograde in combust. And so we just have to really be conscious of this. Maintaining a strong sense of purpose. True endurance is not based on rigidity, because endurance implies flexibility, not being locked in position. Only by adapting to change can we stay in the race. And only by deepening our sense of purpose can we call forth the strength to win it. Continuity is achieved through movement, not by keeping still. So the momentum, what we don't want this week in terms of the solution in your behavioral solution making, in your actions, remember when Mars is coming out of Cancer and going into Leo, so we're getting off the couch, getting out of lazy mode, and we're getting into a child's sense of wonderment, but doing mode. It's exploration, but it's movement in this regard. It's moving. It's not being still. That which has ceased to grow is degrading towards death. Be actively changing, but stay strongly connected with your roots, your deepest thoughts and feelings. All right, we go into our calculator. We take our new moon. We got a second try at this to do it right. And once again, 45, hexagram 45. And we get Taurus solution, sidereal solution. We get Rave Mandala 45. You want to know where my mistake was last week? There's 47 right there. I can right there. It's the minutes. My eye peeled to 47 and 45. So now we have 45, Gate of the Gatherer. Gathering together is the expression for the entire tribal group and is a throat gate of primary action. All of the potential power of the three motors focuses through this expression. So you can see right now, it's more of a communication and expression of action. Expression in the form of action, moving forward. That confirms the I-Ching. The 45 is the key to harmony of the community. And then when you pinpoint the solar eclipse in the Rave Mandala, it's line 3, where it says the ability when excluded to take whatever measures are necessary to dissolve the antiquated form and to accept even humiliation to achieve inclusion. It's to go to any length to be included, to feel included. The instinct to find a way to be included in a material process. Honing in on that word material, because that comes from the Dreambot too. It's overlapped in the construction and the steel and the real material creation process. Now, on the downside of this line, it says an aggressive and often violent reaction to exclusion. So let's not get angry. Let's not have your pity party. Find another tribe. The expression of frustration when not included in a material process. Sounds like a little kid, right? Well, be aware that Mars in Leo can feel that way. Easily can feel like a kid. And it's a good way to feel creative and feel wonderment and curious. But it's a bad thing when things don't go right and you act like a kid and you have a pity party and that sort of thing. All right, folks, let's get straight to the summary slide. I'm skipping our sponsorship because we're getting long here. The pressure to create, and I think that Mercury retrograde combust and the new moon, both of those energies are sort of discombobulating, and they happen at about the same time. Also, the square to Neptune is going to create this pressure. And so all things considered, I think it's a time to really relax the mind. But that's the influence. It's up here in the mind, but it's confusing. It's making mistakes. It's feeling distractible, lack of focus. It's misunderstanding people. That's the influence. So what do? Well, we're going to triangulate the three different things. The I-Ching 32 says endurance. Just keep moving forward and be determined and have a sense of purpose. The Rave says the gate of the gatherer, finding a way to be included. And you temper that with the feelings of frustration for feeling left out. And then we also have the Taurus. Notice that the I-Ching 32 is endurance, and our sidereal solution is Taurus. These are direct overlaps. The only thing that doesn't overlap is avoid being too rigid. I mean, I guess that's still an overlap with Taurus, but that's the challenge that we have, is how to be the best Taurus, but while not being too rigid. So let's see what this overlap looks like. Another portal, eclipse in total Gemini and tropical Gemini. The time leading up to the eclipse is mental stress, as that diagram indicated above, and possible confusion. Problematic reality testing, which may bleed into relationships, according to Rave 45. Sidereal Taurus and the I-Ching 32 are direct overlaps. Use integrity and be dependable, and keep moving forward. This week is about endurance and moving forward consistently without being too rigid or too stubborn. I believe that the Mars in Leo will actually help you not be too rigid or too stubborn. It naturally makes you a little bit more curious and explorative and creative. Let's see. With the element of flexibility is vital, especially with the rational, logical troubles and misunderstandings. Very fortunate total eclipse. It should be annular eclipse, offers new cycle of mental aptitude, learning, humor, travel, harmonizing, etc. It's basically everything Mercury and Gemini. Stay centered through this birthing, as it can be very mentally confusing, but within 24 hours, get ready to go. Get ready to move forward. Get ready to be curious with Mars in Leo. And with the Mercury retrograde moving out of the combust stage and thoughts coming back, rational. One more thing that I forgot to mention is that the sun, total eclipse versus annular eclipse. I talked about annular being the ring of fire. Total eclipse is where the moon is closer to Earth and thereby appears to be bigger, where it perfectly covers the sun, so there is no ring of fire. It's just that globe outside of the sun. All right, 39 minutes and change. Thanks for being here, everybody. Enjoy your solar eclipse. Check my work, and I enjoy hearing from all of you on Telegram is below, and YouTube. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. See you next week.